I'm Craig. I'm Joint Chief Strategy Officer at AMV, but mainly tonight I am Chair of the APG. So welcome to what is now, I guess, I keep running out of how many of these we've done, but it's definitely October's Noisy Thinking, presented in association with Flamingo. I think we will book these three speakers every time because I'm not sure we've had quite this many people in the room before, so I think we're just going to get them back speaking on this topic every month. We'll see how it goes. This evening we will be talking about Planning 3.0, Planning Without a Roadmap. And when we were writing the title, I was thinking of that scene at the end of Back to the Future where the DeLorean levitates and the doc says, where we're going, we won't need any roads. And I think with planning, at the moment, maybe we're not sure where we're going. We might need some roads. We don't have a map yet, and hopefully the three speakers this evening will help us find one. I'm hoping as well they'll cover what Planning 2.0 was, because I definitely remember 1.0, and this is going to be 3.0. I think I missed out on 2.0, but we shall see as we go. So three fantastic speakers this evening. We will begin with Tracey Follows, who is currently Chief Strategy Officer at JWT, and has been my client twice. Which drove her into planning. She was perhaps inspired by the strategic thinking the other side of the table and thought that she needed to do that. But she started off in agency life, then she's been a client at One-to-One, then became T-Mobile, and then onto BT, and then into agency world where she's worked for initially Lowe's, then VCCP, and now most recently JWT. So she will bring her perspective to bear on this. After that, we have David Hackworthy, who is planning partner at Red Brick Road. Probably needs very little introduction, but a great friend of the APG who's presented at a number of these kinds of events before. Has done planning, I think, in at least 3 countries now, and so has a good broad perspective on a range of different types of agencies, a range of different kinds of clients. He's worked in pretty much every single client sector in 2 of the world's biggest advertising and marketing markets. So what he doesn't know about how planning works is probably not worth knowing, and he has some very strong views on this subject. And finally, Alex Dunstan, whose title continues to elude me, his title at M&C Saatchi, largely because it's so long. He is the central thinker in the strategic thinking unit of some sort. He assures me he used to be a planner. Maybe one day he will be a planner again, once he's finished with being the central strategic thinker in the strategic thinking unit, but has some very good, strong views on planning and is a kind of fantastically provocative thinker, and also, along with Tracey, a member of the APG committee at the moment, so has a vested interest in this evening going very well. So the way the thing works, many of you I'm sure have been here before, you will know that we are famous for the precision of our timekeeping, and that each of the speakers will hopefully speak to around about 15 or 20 minutes, or like Rory Sutherland did, 45 minutes. Whilst fantastically entertaining, that wasn't great for all of our timekeeping, so 15 to 20 minutes each, and then should we have time, we will open up for questions at the end, and you'll be able to grill the panel on the various things that they've said. So without further ado, we will begin with Tracey.
Okay, so Planning 3.0. So I'm going to tell you what my argument is straight away, which is I don't think that 3.0 is a new breed of planning, shock, horror, or a new subject, or in some ways a new way of doing things. I actually think it's a wake-up call, an early morning wake-up call for us not to ignore actually the best of what's old. I think there really is a danger of that. And I don't believe that Planning 3.0 is experience planning as much as it is about experienced planners. So I'll get onto my argument. Before I do, actually have a look at this. You've all seen this before, right? Yeah. What do you see?
The young one.
Yeah, a young woman. Who sees the old woman? Okay, so about half and half. Remember what you see and remember how you feel, and we'll come back to that. That's no one I know, by the way. Web 3.0, let's start with that, because Planning 3.0, in a way, has to presume that we all understand what we mean by 3.0. And I'm just going to take us through this, because in terms of pure technology, if you like, Web 3.0 is about 4 things, as I'm sure we all know. It's about the social web, the semantic web, the Internet of Things, and artificial intelligence. Gosh, that sounds really complex, doesn't it? The combination of these things, of course, are going to mean that we have increasingly personalised online experiences. And actually, if you ask anybody what Planning 3.0 is, that's probably what they'll say. It's about personalisation. But what I wanted to talk about today was one of those things, which is the semantic web. Because I think that's the bit about data and information and research that's most going to impact us. It is also about language and knowledge and communication. And of course, those are all the tools of the planner. So that's what I wanted to draw on. Here's somebody who knows something about the semantic web. So Tim Berners-Lee says, I have a dream for the web in which computers become capable of analysing all the data on the web, content, links and transactions between people and computers. A semantic web, which should make this possible, has yet to emerge, but when it does, the day-to-day mechanisms of trade, bureaucracy and our daily lives will be handled by machines talking to machines. The intelligent agents people have touted for ages will finally materialise. So you kind of read that, and I think if you're a planner, you go, right, so awareness, consideration, preference, advocacy, well, those are all just algorithms then. Greg Smith wrote in Adweek an overlay of interpretation on this 10 years after that quote, and I think this is very compelling. He says, Berners-Lee refers to 3.0 as a semantic web because software can learn, intuit and decide. This means people will have intelligent agent software filtering information and making decisions for them, like what's the best, what's the lowest priced. And for marketeers, this means the potential for unprecedented targeting and data mining. But advertising would be less effective. Marketeers would stand on their merits, not their claims. After all, how do you convince software? Quite scary. The semantic web, you see, I think is a vision of information that can be readily interpreted by machines. So if, like me, you believe that language defines reality, you could say that Planning 3.0 is the point in time when computer language starts to describe our world. So as Tim Berners-Lee has said, there'll be intelligent agents, and by this he means machines talking to machines. Data will be stored and categorised in a way that computers, and maybe humans, if we're really lucky, can understand. Are we really going to let computers decide the world for us and describe it? Perhaps if machines can not only inform but research things for us, perhaps if they're going to give us a view on content and how valuable it is, or to do some of the reasoning for us, this is going to change a lot of things. It's going to change brand planning, it's going to change communication, and it's going to change any kind of customer journey that you might be thinking about right now on behalf of your clients. And the key question is, will the internet swallow planning in the way that it swallowed TV? If planning is increasingly about optimising, perhaps there is an argument to say, well, the machines can do it for us, because actually they can carry it out better than us. Is that what we want? And are we going to hire planners who, haven't got philosophy degrees or psychology or even mathematics or statistics or, God forbid, marketing? Perhaps they just need computer science, because that's what planning will become. I think that's a really, really scary scenario. So I went and asked some 3.0 people, as I know them, what they thought planning was going to be like. And the first thing that Paul Mead said was this. Does anybody know Paul? He's an absolute guru in this area, really frighteningly intelligent man who runs VCSP Media. And he said, planning is what machines tell us about intent. It requires planners to look beyond accepted but inaccurate forms of data that we currently use, so like panels and demographics. Essentially, we don't care who you are, we just care about what signals we can respond to. Why buy an audience when you can buy an individual or an interaction? It will mean that planners require more than just an impressive pair of glasses in the future. Arguably, they won't exist at all in their current form. I think he meant planners, not glasses. So we're planning interactions. That's really what he's saying. This isn't so much about communications. This is about interactions. And it is a guru, but these kinds of words, this kind of thinking gets taken and I think blown out of proportion and over-exaggerated, actually. And I think some people interpret this as to mean there will be exclusively only ever highly personalised interactions with machines in the future. So you get idiots like this on Twitter. So this is in Toronto. I think it was a new media conference. May even had the words and the numbers 3.0 in it. Masses over, it's nano communications. So this was tweeted out. I couldn't resist. I just couldn't help it. Look at the date. It's 21st of September. So I just sent them that. I mean, you know, you've got to think before you tweet. I asked Adil Abrar, I don't know if any of you know him. He used to be a traditional planner, if you like, at TBWA, actually. He now runs a really successful, really interesting company called Sidekick. And he helps startups start up and government and other types of organisation. So I asked him what he thought, and he said, well, you know, planning is so last century. We live in a world of apps, services, experiences, user experience, UX. I think he thought he had to explain it for me. UX is the new planning. Crikey. Right, I said, so don't you think you need a kind of narrative? Don't you need to create meaning, to tell stories that connect people? Obviously, I was thinking again about the Olympics. And I mean, you've only got to look at the storytelling that was so successful there in terms of setting up brand Britain and brand London 2012 and really creating a lot of audience engagement. And he said, brand planning is a subset of UX. And I said, bloody hell. I mean, you can see why people are saying this. I can see why claims must live up to the experience. If you're a mobile phone network and you're claiming that you're better connected, and then you leave your customers dangling with no network coverage for 24 hours or more, you can see why people do this and have a pop at communications. But that's one thing. I think it's become the prevailing narrative of our industry at the time. These quotes that we've had aren't a million miles away from conclusions that we get that, you know, there is no brand planning anymore. The future isn't in brand. The future isn't in planning as we've known it. So I know Nick's here tonight. I thought he wasn't going to be, so I'll modify what I was going to say. No, I was going to say Nick's paper on 3.0 is brilliant. It's well written, it's well argued, and he's an excellent planner, of course. What I take issue with, I suppose, is the reductionist conclusion that everything we now plan is an experience. I think what I really take issue with is one of the premises of the paper, which basically says that brand planning, or argues that brand planning is not practical. So that's the quote. That's the quote, isn't it, on the front cover of AdMap. Planners need to transcend conceptual and practical philosophies. So just to borrow Nick's words for now, he says the conceptual planners have history on their side. Everyone knows that strategic thinking is about ideas. This sense of the power of ideas is what buys conceptual planners their place at the top table. The practical planners can make a strong claim to own the facts because a lot of what they do is easily quantifiable. Now, the thing is, I think that's to make a sort of category mistake, to demarcate in that way between two types of planning. And I think that I have history on my side. Because with John Griffiths, where's John? Yeah, we've been doing a rather interesting, well, it's his idea, I'm piggybacking. We've done a very interesting project where we've gone and interviewed a lot of first generation, sometimes second generation planners. So you're talking to people who were planning in BMP or JWT in 1969, people who were heads of planning in 1974, and it has been absolutely fascinating to hear from them how they did it, what they thought they were doing, what they were actually doing, now they look back on it, and whether and how planning has changed over time. What's amazed me is just how practical their conceptual planning was. So, you know, the reason the honey monster had to be big and cumbersome was to communicate an acceptable level of mischief to mums. You know, it comes down to execution. The reason the OXO family, I mean, they had Britain writing letters of complaint in when they first launched the OXO family. There was outrage because we were showing kids who were being independent in these new types of families. And that's quite interesting because the whole cultural ethos, you know, it had been quite dark and depressing with series like Butterflies. It was all very serious, and now suddenly you were seeing kids in the family making mischief. Some people didn't like it. Now, these planners demonstrated again and again in the conversations that we've had just that they knew how their campaigns worked. Or to put it another way, they knew exactly how their communications created a very specific meaning between the brand and the consumer. I mean, can we all say that we know that of all of our brands today? Do we think we know? Do we think our clients know? Do we know how? Do clients even ask us, how do these campaigns actually work? I don't know. I don't think we hear it enough. And I think what I'm saying is that 40 or 50 years ago, there was no distinction between conceptual planning and practical planning. And I don't think there should be one today. So I'll give you an example. Starbucks. Has anybody noticed how when you go in now, they ask for your name when you place your order? Yeah, so what's your order? Well, skinny chai tea latte. What's your name? Tracey. They pop my name on the cup. It's lovely. Later they call my completed order for collection, and they use my name, not the name of the drink. Gosh, it's also 3.0 personalised and intelligent, isn't it? So 21st century. What a great piece of experience planning. Except I go to the same Starbucks every day, and every day they ask me my name. So they used to just smile and say hello, and I thought, great, we've made a connection. But now I tell them on a Monday my name, they've forgotten it by Tuesday. I tell them again on Tuesday, they've forgotten it by Wednesday. I tell them on Wednesday, it's just a transaction. It's an interaction. It isn't a communication. And the truth of it is I've stopped going now because, frankly, it saves embarrassment on all parts. So there's the Starbucks conceptual idea, losing one customer at a time. Now, Andy Nairn said last time I think we met, September, last Noisy Thinking, that we're suffering from newism. And I agree with that, but I also think we're suffering from nowism. We think we're in the business of machine-to-machine interaction, and we've forgotten that actually that's a subset of communication. We didn't start calling planning service planning in the 1990s when more and more service brands needed planning. We did, however, in the last decade call some planning digital planning. And actually, looking back on that, I think arguably that was a mistake. I don't think we need to call planning in the days of Web 3.0 experience planning. It's brand planning. And in fact, the more we get het up about experience planning, the more I think we've forgotten our purpose. We've forgotten that we're here to do this. We're here to create value for brands. We're here to make profit. And whilst we're just planning experiences, interesting things people might want to do that don't necessarily contribute financially, I don't really think we're doing planning. When we focused on brand planning and how it creates profit, we're growing businesses. So here's a great quote I'm sure you all know from Stephen King in 1971. He talks about what is a brand. First, it has to be a coherent totality, not a lot of bits. The physical product, the pack, and all the elements of communication, the name, the style, the advertising, pricing, promotion, and so on, must be blended into a single brand personality. Secondly, it has to be unique and constantly developing to stay unique, because it is through its uniqueness that the brand can offer sustained profit margins. And the uniqueness will depend on both functional and non-functional values, appeal to the senses, the reason, and the emotions. The added values beyond the functional may become increasingly important. Exactly, he was right. The added values beyond the functional have become more important. Many more of those are now experiences. But creating and developing experiences is just a subset of brand, not vice versa. So to put it another way, which of these is most valuable? Okay, Facebook. I mean, here they say 500 million users, one awesome logo. Oh, it must be a brand then. Now they've got 1 billion users, obviously. But which of these is a brand? Facebook or Amazon? Facebook aren't really sure how to monetize their experience, but Amazon absolutely are, because they were a brand first that's now building in experiences. So I would invest in the one that is a service that has meaning and is building in more experiences on the right, not an experience trying to build some meaning in to become a brand. But perhaps this is to look at everything the wrong way. Remember this. So who was it who saw the old woman? Yeah. And who saw the young woman? And who saw nothing? What would you feel like if you could only see one image? Wouldn't you feel like you were missing out? Wouldn't you feel like you weren't properly experiencing the whole thing or properly understanding the whole meaning? Isn't, I'd argue, the general view of the illusion, in this case, better than the specialist view of just the young woman or the old woman? Isn't it more fulfilling? So that's why I'm not a reductionist. This is why I don't think it's ever as simple as making it simple. And even more so in the modern world, life is full of complexities. And post-digital life is even more so. So why would we try and strain the lumps out? Why do we want to boil it all down to one flavour when our experiences can be so multifaceted and abundant? I don't think it's the job of the planner to reduce things to one simple element. I do think it is the job of the planner not to tackle complexity, but to tackle uncertainty. Look at this image again. The meaning this image creates and the interest and engagement you have in it comes not from its simplicity, but from a kind of synergy. So in a world of synergy, you can shift back and forth between one perspective and another, between one experience and another, from one meaning to another. You can shift back and forth in between a brand claim and a brand experience, between a message and a service. I think it's really important because this practice of synergy teaches us to value the difference. And I think that's where the planner is at their strongest, to know and appreciate the value of the other, what the other brings. And that's empathy, and from empathy comes insight. So I love the idea of synergy. I think it's the antithesis of integration. Machines, let's go back to the point at the beginning, will be able to do integration. The end goal of integration is to have something that is unified, simplified, reduced down to one single item. Integration, therefore, is a process. But synergy, now that's different. That's a possibility. That's about different things, mixing them up, and then becoming united rather than unified. These are about different entities. Integration requires power to simplify, whereas synergy requires influence. And I think we should perhaps rethink what we're doing with brands and communication and acknowledge that brands are made up of meaning as well as experience, ideas as well as actions, and guess what? Stimulus as well as response, to use an old phrase. Perhaps it's time for the Chief Synergy Officer. So with that idea of synergy, not simplicity, let's swing back round to machine empowered world of semantic web. I mean, I hope I've showed that we'll be inhabiting a world where everything communicates. Therefore, knowledge really isn't primarily just residing with planners. And here's the crux of the argument. I know you thought I'd never get here. But planning is more than knowledge. It's really important. We don't think about it like that enough. The role of the planner goes beyond having knowledge. It is, in fact, the role of the planner, unlike the machine, not to know everything. I don't think planners should be expected to know everything. It's the role of the planner to question everything, and that's really different. Here's an interesting little piece of dialogue. It's just an anecdote from somebody who lives in the States, who's rung up to try and get their washing machine fixed. So IT, if you like, the machine, says, what would you like to do? You can make, change, or cancel an appointment, or order it. I'd like to make an appointment. You want to make an appointment, right? Right. I'm sorry, please say yes or no. Yes. Okay, what sort of product needs the service? For example, say my refrigerator or furnace washer. Okay, so you want to make an appointment to service a washer, right? Yes. I'm sorry, I didn't get that. Yes. Please say yes or no. You want to make an appointment to service a washer, right? Yes. I'm sorry, thank you for calling, ex-customer service. Have a nice day. This is Tim Berners-Lee. And frankly, if he can't get his washing machine to work, having invented the internet, I don't think there's much hope for any of us. But he says, the good news is I called back and learnt to say, yep, because he was in the States. There's an example of man-to-machine communication in which there is a great deal of information, quite a lot of knowledge, and absolutely no wisdom. The point is there's a difference between the concepts of knowledge and wisdom. Machines may one day have an awful lot of knowledge, but wisdom will only ever reside in people. So for me, when you talk about wisdom, unlike computers, wisdom is the tension between knowing and not knowing. And Carl Weick will say that as well. I don't know if you've read his writings on sense-making. It's a strong theme of his. And that's why also he says that specialists are grumpy and generalists are happy. What he says is generalists have more alternative pathways to consider to realise their plans. It's an interesting point. Again, not a reductionist. Which takes us back to arguing for the importance of uncertainty rather than simplicity. So what I'd say is that brand communications are at their best like this, actually. They contain some unknowables, some uncertainties, and they certainly contain complexities. And that's why it requires wisdom rather than knowledge to develop them. So those who say that brand is a subset of UX, like Adil, are really saying that in a world of personalisation and trackable purchase intent, we won't need these kinds of communication. You know, they believe that communications are a subset of interactions, that meaning is a subset of experience, that brand is a subset of UX. I don't believe that. I believe the opposite. Interactions are a subset of communications. So the geeks might have built a network of interactions known as the World Wide Web, but the communicators, the planners, will build a network of the World Wide Web. And that sits on top. It transcends individual interactions, and it brings back, guess what, common sense. For what is common sense if not everyday wisdom? I haven't been the only person to say that, you'll be happy to know. Common sense is an uncommon degree. It's what the world calls wisdom. Or, if you like, here's another quote, the young man knows the rules, but the old man knows the exceptions. I think that's really, really important. So to draw to a close, for me, Planning 3.0 is the chance for planners to redress the balance. We don't want planners to be analysts. We want planners to have wisdom. It is not the role of the planner to always have to try and have the answer, to always analyse, to always integrate everything like a machine. It's to embrace differences, uncertainties, to question everything, and actually to allow for synergy, not simplicity. Develop a kind of wisdom, and as perhaps we better know it, common sense. I think our job is to deal with the things that are unsaid and the things that are undone, and to understand those. And so I'll leave you with something that I think is very common sense. Knowledge is knowing a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting it in the fruit salad. Thank you.